That is how the world sees me first. Gray hair thinning at the temples, hands marked with lines that speak of decades of work, eyes carrying a tired calm. People assume my story is finished, that love has already happened to me, long ago, and left quietly without saying goodbye. They are wrong. My story began again on a bus. The bus was old, just like me. Its metal body rattled as it moved along the highway, windows slightly cracked, letting warm air and dust drift inside. The seats were narrow, covered in faded blue fabric, worn smooth by countless journeys. I had chosen a window seat, as I always did, because watching the road pass by helped me feel less alone. I was traveling to a small city where no one knew my name. At my age, travel is not about excitement anymore. It is about movement, about reminding yourself that you are still alive, still capable of going somewhere new. I carried a small bag with a change of clothes, my medicines, and an old paperback novel I never finished reading. The bus was half full when it started. Families talked loudly. Children laughed. Vendors shouted from outside as the driver honked impatiently. Then, at the next stop, the door opened again. That was when he came in. He was young, clearly in his early 20s, maybe 23 or 24. An adult, confident in his body, yet still carrying the softness of youth. He had dark hair that fell naturally across his forehead, eyes that seemed too gentle for the harshness of the road, and a face so striking that for a moment I forgot how to breathe. He looked around for an empty seat, and then, fate or coincidence, or perhaps something kinder, he sat beside me. At first, neither of us spoke. I noticed small details without meaning to. The way he adjusted his backpack, the quiet focus in his eyes as he looked out the window, the faint scent of soap or cologne when he moved. I told myself not to stare. Old men should not look too long at beautiful things. It only reminds them of what they have lost. The bus moved on. Minutes passed, then more. After some time, I felt him shift slightly beside me. He turned his head and smiled, a real smile, warm and unguarded. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Do you have some water?" His voice was calm, respectful, not careless, not mocking. "Yes," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I reached into my bag and took out my water bottle, offering it to him. "Here." "Thank you," he said, taking it carefully, as if afraid of spilling even a drop. He drank slowly, then handed it back. "I appreciate it." "You're welcome," I said. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. He didn't turn away. Instead, he asked, "Are you traveling far?" "Not very," I answered. "Just far enough." He smiled again. "That sounds like a story." "Everything sounds like a story when you're old," I said without thinking. He laughed, softly, kindly. Not the laughter of someone making fun, but the laughter of someone listening. "I don't think that's true," he said. "I think stories start when people stop expecting them." Something about that sentence stayed with me. From then on, conversation flowed naturally. He told me he was returning from visiting a friend, that he worked part-time and was studying. I told him small, harmless things about myself, where I lived, how I liked traveling by bus because trains felt too rushed. I did not tell him how lonely I often felt. I did not tell him how long it had been since someone chose to sit beside me. Yet somehow he seemed to know. Time passed differently while talking to him. The bus rattled. The road stretched endlessly. But inside that small shared space, there was warmth. He asked me about my life, not out of politeness, but curiosity. He listened when I spoke, really listened, as if my words mattered. No one had done that in years. And somewhere between his laughter and his questions, between the sound of the engine and the passing trees, something dangerous and beautiful happened. I felt it. Love. Not sudden, not wild, but quiet, like a light turning on in a room I had kept dark for too long. I tried to ignore it. Old men do not fall in love with young men on buses. Old men should know better. But the heart does not ask permission. The bus slowed suddenly. There was a sharp sound and a jolt. Murmurs spread among the passengers. The driver pulled over to the side of the road and turned off the engine. After a few minutes, he announced the problem. The bus had broken down. Repairs would take time. People complained. Some got off to make phone calls. The young man beside me stood up and stretched. "There's a park nearby," he said, looking at me. "Do you want to sit there while we wait?" For a moment, I hesitated. Then I nodded. "Yes," I said, "I'd like that." The park was quiet. Tall trees provided shade, and birds moved freely without fear. We sat on a bench, side by side, the noise of the road far behind us. For the first time, there was silence between us, but it was not uncomfortable. It was heavy. I knew I could not carry this feeling without speaking it. Not at my age. Not after so many years of silence. I turned to him. "There is something I need to tell you," I said. He looked at me, serious now. "Okay." I took a breath. "You are very special to me," I said slowly, in a way I didn't expect. "You make me feel seen. And I know I am old, and this may sound strange, but I don't want to lie." He waited. "I like you," I continued, "very much. And somewhere along the road, I realized I have fallen in love with you." The words hung in the air. I did not touch him. I did not move closer. I only waited. Whatever his answer would be, it would matter. For a moment, he said nothing. The park felt suddenly very quiet. Even the birds seemed to pause, as if the world itself was waiting for his response. I kept my hands folded in my lap, my eyes lowered, not out of shame, but out of respect. I had spoken my truth. Now the choice was his. He inhaled slowly. "I'm glad you told me," he said at last. I looked up, surprised, not by anger, not by discomfort, but by the calm in his voice. His expression was thoughtful, not fearful. Curious, even. "You're not upset?" I asked carefully. He shook his head. "No, I was just trying to understand what I'm feeling." That honesty touched me deeply. He leaned back against the bench and stared at the trees above us. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting soft shadows on his face. In that light, he looked even more beautiful, not just physically, but in the openness of his spirit. "You know," he said quietly, "people think love only belongs to the young, or that it follows rules. But I don't think it does." My heart beat faster. "I don't want to hurt you," he continued, "and I don't want you to feel embarrassed for saying what you felt. I respect you for being brave enough to say it." I swallowed hard. "That is more than I expected. I admit it." He turned toward me then, really looking at me, not at my age, not at my gray hair, but at me. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything," I replied. "When did you start feeling this way?" I thought back to the bus, to the water bottle, to his laughter. "Somewhere between your smile and your kindness," I said softly. I realized my heart was awake again. He smiled, not wide, not playful, but warm. "That's beautiful," he said. We sat there for a long time. We talked, not about love, not yet, but about life. He told me about his dreams, his uncertainties, how sometimes he felt lost even with youth on his side. I told him about my past, about the love I once had and lost, about the years that followed filled with routine and quiet loneliness. "You don't seem lonely," he said suddenly. "I am," I replied honestly, "but today less so." He nodded, understanding. There was something gentle growing between us, not rushed, not demanding, just connection, respect, a shared silence that felt safe. At one point, the wind grew stronger. He shivered slightly. Without thinking, I took off my light jacket and offered it to him. "You'll catch a cold," I said. He hesitated. "And you?" "I've lived long enough to handle a little wind," I replied with a smile. He laughed softly and took the jacket, slipping it on. It looked too big on him, and for some reason that made my chest ache. "Thank you," he said, "for the jacket, and for trusting me with your feelings." "You deserved honesty," I replied. Soon, we heard the distant sound of the bus horn. Repairs were done. People began returning from the roadside, from phone calls and impatience. Our moment in the park was ending, but something else had begun. As we stood up from the bench, he looked at me. "I don't know where this will lead," he said honestly, "but I don't want this to end when the bus starts moving again." Hope, quiet and careful, rose inside me. "Neither do I," said. He smiled, and for the first time, his hand brushed mine, not accidentally, not rushed, just a brief, gentle touch. And in that small contact, I felt something extraordinary. Not youth, not regret, possibility. When we returned to the bus, everything felt different. The same worn seats, the same dusty windows, the same tired engine. But inside me, something had shifted. The young man sat beside me again, this time without hesitation, as if that place now belonged to him. Or perhaps I belonged to that moment. The bus started moving, slow at first, then steady. Outside, the park disappeared behind us, swallowed by distance. Yet what happened there stayed alive, warm, breathing between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Silence returned, but not the empty kind. It was thoughtful, full of unspoken questions and quiet awareness. I could feel his presence beside me more clearly now, as if my senses had sharpened. He broke the silence first. "You know," he said, looking straight ahead, "I've never talked like this with someone your age before." I smiled faintly. Most people don't want to hear old men talk. "That's not true," he replied. "Most people just don't listen." That simple sentence meant more to me than he could ever know. He turned slightly toward me. "Can I be honest, too?" I nodded. "Please." "When you told me how you felt, it surprised me," he said carefully. "But it didn't scare me. What scared me was how natural it felt." My breath caught. "I didn't expect to feel connected to you," he continued. "But on that bus, I felt calm. Safe. Like I could just be myself without performing for the world." I closed my eyes briefly. "That is exactly how I felt," I said. The bus rolled on, hour after hour. We shared small things. Music he liked, books I loved, memories that shaped us. Sometimes our arms brushed when the road curved sharply. Each time, neither of us pulled away. At one point, he leaned closer, his voice low. "People would judge," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "They always do." "Does that bother you?" I thought about it. At my age, I said, "What people think matters less than what is true." He smiled, slow and thoughtful. "I wish I had that courage," he said. "You will," I told him. "It comes with time and pain." He looked at me with something close to admiration. As evening approached, the sky outside changed colors, gold fading into orange, then deepening toward purple. The bus lights flickered on. The world softened. He yawned slightly, then laughed at himself. "Long day," he said. "You can rest," I offered. "There's still time before your stop." He hesitated. Then carefully, he leaned his head against the seat, just close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, though he didn't touch me directly. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said softly. "Very." Minutes passed. Then, almost without realizing it, his head tilted, resting lightly against my shoulder. I froze for half a second. Then I relaxed. I did not move my arm. I did not breathe too deeply. I simply existed in that moment, aware of every heartbeat, every quiet second. No one had leaned on me like that in years, perhaps ever. He trusted me. That trust was more intimate than any touch. When he eventually lifted his head, he looked slightly embarrassed. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to—" "It's all right," I interrupted gently. I was honored. He smiled, eyes soft. "I'm glad I met you," he said. "Even if this journey had ended today, I would still be glad." I looked at him, my heart full and aching all at once. "This journey," I said quietly, "is far from over." The bus slowed as dusk settled into night. Streetlights appeared one by one, glowing softly like quiet witnesses to passing lives. Inside the bus, conversations faded. People prepared to leave. Bags pulled closer. Phones checked. Goodbyes already forming in their minds. He looked out the window, then back at me. "My stop is coming soon," he said. The words landed heavier than I expected. I nodded, though something inside me resisted the idea. "Yes," I said. "I thought so." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The space between us felt fragile now, as if one wrong movement could break it. I wanted to say many things. to ask for more time, to ask for reassurance, but I held myself back. Love does not demand. It waits. He reached into his pocket and took out his phone, turning it over in his hands. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "After today, will you remember me?" I smiled gently. "I will remember you for the rest of my life." His eyes softened. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "I was hoping I wouldn't be the only one holding on to this." He unlocked his phone and held it toward me. "If you want," he continued, "we can stay in touch. Talk. Learn where this feeling belongs." My hands trembled slightly as I took the phone and entered my number. "I don't want to rush anything," he added, "but I don't want to lose you either." "You won't," I said. "Not easily." The bus came to a stop. People stood up, blocking the aisle. Noise returned briefly. Footsteps, voices, the sound of doors opening. He stood, adjusting his backpack, then turned to face me one last time. In that narrow space between seats, the world felt incredibly small. "I'm glad the bus broke down," he said softly. "So am I replied. He hesitated, then leaned closer. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel his breath. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me as more than just someone passing by." "And thank you," I answered, "for reminding me that my heart still knows how to feel." He smiled, one of those smiles you carry with you long after it fades. Then he stepped off the bus. I watched through the window as he walked away, pausing once to look back and lift his hand in a small wave. I raised mine in return. The bus moved again. The seat beside me was empty, but it did not feel lonely anymore because love had sat there. And even as the road stretched ahead, I knew something deep within me had already changed. Not every love stays. Not every story ends together. That night, I did not sleep. The room where I stayed was small and quiet, the kind of place travelers forget as soon as they leave. Yet my mind was louder than any city street. I lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the journey. The way he asked for water, the sound of his laugh, the warmth of his head against my shoulder. At my age, nights are usually filled with memories of what has been lost. That night was different. It was filled with what might still be possible. My phone rested on the table beside the bed. I kept glancing at it, unsure whether I should be the one to reach out first. Old habits whispered caution. Old fears warned me not to hope too much. Then, just past midnight, the screen lit up. A message. I reached home safely. I kept thinking about our conversation. I hope you did too. I closed my eyes, letting out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. I did. I typed back, "More than you know." 3 small dots appeared almost instantly. Good, because today mattered to me. From that moment on, our days quietly intertwined. We did not message constantly. There was no urgency, no pressure. Instead, there was something far more intimate, intent. Every message carried thought. Every word felt chosen. He asked about my mornings, about the places I had visited, about my favorite memories. I asked about his studies, his work, the music that stayed with him when he was alone. Sometimes, hours would pass before one of us replied, but neither of us doubted the silence. One evening, he sent a message that made my heart stop. "Can I tell you something honestly?" "Always," I replied. "I've been trying to understand what I feel. And I think what scares me isn't your age. It's how deeply you make me feel understood." I read the words again and again. "That kind of connection," he continued, "doesn't happen often, and I don't want to ignore it just because it doesn't fit a rule." My hands shook as I typed. "I never want to confuse you," I wrote, "or pull you into something you're not ready for." "You didn't," he replied. "You just opened a door." Weeks passed. We spoke on the phone for the first time late one night. His voice, clearer and closer than I remembered, filled the room. We laughed. We shared silences that felt natural, not awkward. "You know," he said softly, "when I imagine you, I don't see an old man. What do you see?" I asked. "I see someone steady," he replied. "Someone who doesn't pretend. Someone who makes the world feel less noisy." I smiled, eyes burning slightly. And you, I said, make it feel alive again. One day, he asked a question I both feared and hoped for. Can we meet again, he said. Not by accident, not because a bus broke down, but because we choose to. I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, yes, if you're sure. I am, he replied. I want to see where this feeling leads. Slowly, honestly. That night, as I set my phone down, I realized something profound. Love had not returned to me as a storm. It had come back as a quiet knock, patient, gentle, and full of promise. The day we planned to meet again arrived quietly. There was no dramatic announcement from the sky, no sign to tell me this moment would matter. Yet from the moment I woke up, my heart behaved like a young thing, restless, hopeful, awake in a way I had almost forgotten. I stood longer than usual in front of the mirror. The man looking back at me was still old. The years were still there, written clearly on my face. But something else lived behind my eyes now. Anticipation, tenderness, courage. I chose my clothes carefully, not to impress, but to feel like myself. Before leaving, I paused, placing a hand over my chest. Calm down, I told my heart. You are allowed to feel this. We had agreed to meet in a quiet cafe near a river. When I arrived, he wasn't there yet. I chose a table near the window, hands wrapped around a cup of tea I hadn't touched. Every time the door opened, my breath caught. Then it happened. He walked in. For a moment, the world narrowed to just him. His familiar posture, his calm walk, the way his eyes searched the room. When they found me, his face lit up with a smile so genuine it made my chest ache. He came toward me. Hello, he said softly. Hello, I replied, standing up without thinking. We hesitated, unsure whether to shake hands, to sit, to say more. Then he laughed quietly. This feels different from the bus, he said. Yes, I answered. Better. We sat. Conversation flowed easily, like it had never stopped. He told me about his week. I told him about mine. But beneath the words, something deeper moved. An awareness, a closeness that did not need explanation. At one point, our hands rested on the table, close enough that our fingers almost touched. Almost. I thought about you a lot, he admitted, eyes steady on mine. About what you said. About how honest you were. I was afraid. I confessed. But I didn't want to meet you while hiding. I'm glad you didn't, he said. I don't want half-truths. The honesty between us felt like a promise. After the cafe, we walked along the river. The water moved slowly, reflecting the sky. People passed us, laughing, talking, living their own stories. To them, we were just two men walking side by side. To me, it felt like something sacred. At one point, he stopped. May I? He asked quietly. I knew what he meant. Yes, I said. He took my hand, not quickly, not boldly, but with care. His fingers were warm, steady. He did not pull me closer. He simply held my hand, as if saying, I'm here. I choose this moment. I felt tears rise unexpectedly. Hey, he said gently. Are you okay? I am, I said, voice thick. I just never thought I would feel this again. He squeezed my hand slightly. Then let's feel it, he said. Without fear, we sat on a bench by the river, shoulders touching. I don't know what the future looks like, he said, but I know this feels real. It does, I agreed, and real is enough for now. He leaned his head against my shoulder, just like on the bus, but this time by choice. My arm rested around him naturally, protectively, without claiming ownership. We stayed like that as the sun began to lower, the light turning gold. In that moment, I understood something important. Love does not belong to age. It belongs to connection, to consent, to choice. And for the first time in many years, I was not remembering love. I was living it.